With the quorum being present, I'll call the meeting to order. We've got an agenda in front of us. Are there some changes to the agenda tonight?
Yes, I do have a few changes. First of all, under resignations, under personnel, you originally received a letter of resignation from Karen Pitts by email to you, a revised version of that resignation letter. And I have a copy of it here if you would like to see that, but I need to add that to the resignation list. And then under substitutes, I need to add substitute Angela Strunk. And for new hires, I need to add Ashley Kelly as a new hire for the third grade position. And those are the only changes that I have.
I'm sorry, who is the the
Third grade teacher?
No, the first one.
Angela Strunk is the substitute. Substitute. Angela Strunk, S-T-R-U-N-K.
And what was the other one?
Ashley Kelly, newly hired teacher for the third grade. The proposed teacher for the third grade.
Last time she was like,
Do you guys want to read that below? It's more clear.
is that all the changes?
Those are all the changes.
Did you have one of this letter real quick? It's just more clear.
I sent it out in an email earlier today too.
That's right.
So they may have seen it.
I guess after we approve the policies, we don't need this anyway, right?
Exactly.
Correct. Yes.
Are there any questions over the consent agenda items? If not, I'd receive a motion to approve as presented with the additions.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
And opposed? Very well. Administrative reports. Who's first? Marty.
All right.
First of all.
Seem to be the popular choice to go first.
You're in the packet first.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. The numbers are all there. We were down a little bit in attendance. That's shocking, I know, from last month. We had a lot of flu and like the other buildings, I'm sure. Of note, FFA week, we've got some FFA folks here with us tonight. And FFA week was one of our best ever. They did a really good job of having activities. I know it's not really my building, but the petting zoo was really fun, and I enjoyed going over there for that. So then they served a big breakfast for teachers on Friday, so just a really good week of FFA stuff. We had our ACT, which we offer that every year, ACT, and then the work keys. Students have that option of which test they take there as juniors. Our math and science relay team, we were second in the SCA in math and science, finishing second only to FAIR. The Bobcats they just do everything well. And but we got second, and we were first place in the challenge competition, which they give, that one you can't really study for in advance. They just give the problem or the equation, and the team has to work together to come up with a solution. And we've won that for the last 4 years. So we've got a good math and science department showing. The bare necessities, I stuck that in there. That's something Mrs. Seiler has done, and it's now in all the buildings. But she shared that. You might have seen it on Facebook, and it kind of went viral. We've had so many posts, but that one, for whatever reason, struck a chord with a lot of people, and there are 20-some thousand shares of that post. I mean, and Patty's now receiving supplies from Pennsylvania and Florida and just all over the country.
Wow.
They've seen that, they liked it, and want to donate. So really a cool story, and I know a lot of schools latched onto that from what she did, and it's getting a lot of use, and just a good thing to have right there for students to just go by and grab what they need without having to make a deal about it. CTE advisory, that's our career and technical education, had that advisory meeting a couple of weeks ago, and just went over all of our career and tech programs, such as ag and business, FACS, and industrial arts, all presented, and that is A+ as well. And that was a good meeting. And then, of course, we had the end of the third quarter. Some upcoming events. We have our health career fair that was supposed to be back in January. It got snowed out. That's Carson Lowe's senior project, and that'll be on Wednesday of this week. So we're looking forward to that. And then Thursday of this week, we'll have our winter sports banquet. Our winter sports teams both had winning seasons and did a nice job. And then March 20th, spring sports begins. So we'll begin baseball, track, tennis, and golf. And then April 4th, before we have our next board meeting, will be prom. So that's always a huge event. And Mrs. Cochran, 175 tickets sold for prom. So we'll be taking about 200 students to Big Cedar Lodge in Branson. So should be a fun time.
Thank you. Any questions for Marty?
Yes, I've got one quick one here. So the bare necessities, that's Mrs. Seiler, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so she went and resigned last month.
She did.
Okay. Are we gonna fill that position?
In the
Yes.
process, I have a plan for that.
Okay,
And that's a district position as well. It's not just.
Right. I mean, that'll come back to the board. And
so that's a district position?
Yes, it is.
So she's the social services coordinator,
She's social worker.
social worker?
Right.
Okay, got it, okay.
I'm kind of looking at making an internal transfer to that position, but I would like to share it with the board at another time.
Okay,
So,
got it, okay. I just didn't know if
Sure.
that was gonna be filled or not.
The work she does is invaluable. She does a really good job, and increasingly we need that support as we deal with a lot of social needs in the school that, as educators, we're not always equipped to deal with that as well as a social counselor is.
Well, so then my next question is, how is a social worker different than like a, high school counselor?
Well, they don't deal with the schedule and making classes, and, a high school counselor traditionally
Uh-huh,
does your scheduling, does your academic planning, and your career counseling. The social, and a lot of times we get calls into the high school, hey, I need to talk to the counselor. Well, do you need the academic counselor or the social counselor? So the social
Okay.
counselor deals with suicide threats,
Family
family issues, trauma, all of these issues that
Okay.
come into the school.
okay, okay. Got it. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
Carson's Health Fair,
Yes.
what, is it all run all day? Or
It'll be all day, I think 9 to 3 are
Where's
its
it?
times. It'll be in the gym, new
In
gym.
the gym? Okay.
How many people did he wind up with?
I'm not sure, I've talked to him
Presenters.
recently, but he had, I think, 20 or 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
As
several.
far as vendors,
Yeah.
I think at one point in time, we said that like 85
Oh, wow,
for the first round. Now, I don't know if he lost some
yeah.
the second time through, but he got a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Most of the
That's what I
area
heard.
schools are coming, so. should be good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Good deal. Tina?
Okay, so as you can see from our attendance, February was a little bit of a rough month in our building. The illness ravaged a grade at a time, so we just watched them as it toppled one grade and then the next week it would be the next. So our attendance took a little bit of a hit, but we were back up today, so we were looking better today, for a Monday especially. So we're hoping that improves back up. We'd like to see it go back up into the 94% range before the end of the year, so that's our goal. We have, our middle school spring sports are all underway, practicing. We have softball, baseball, and track. I think they said something like 23 went out for baseball, for 7th and 8th grade baseball, so we have several teams there if we need them. We have our core area teachers have been working with a lot of consultants, doing half days with them. If you look around on the walls, my math teachers were in here this morning with our MMD DCI consultants, and then Mr. Spence's were in here this afternoon. And they did a lot of reflection on what they've done this year that has been successful, and then planning for what are they going to continue to do next year. And I will tell you, I've seen a difference in those classrooms from the beginning of the year to now, and that work is working. So we hope we also see that reflected in our scores. Rotary is coming in to do a couple of presentations in our district, and one of them will be in my building tomorrow morning. So that's on drug use. And then we started today, actually, we started iReady testing. We will do iReady testing and MAP testing for about the next, after we come back from spring break, it will be for about 5 weeks. So lots of things going on there, planning going on there, and preparation for spring MAP testing. Had some good things happen as far as student achievements. Our middle school CAT teams competed at Carl Junction for Destination Imagination, and they all qualified for state, so we were excited about that. I come in about every week and find at least 1 or 2 chess trophies on my desk. They are regularly bringing back 1st, 2nd, 3rd places for middle school, and we're really proud of them. And then on Friday, I get to go to Barnes and Noble with 41 middle schoolers, and they all had to read either 10 Truman Award or 10 Mark Twain Award books and take quizzes over them to qualify for that trip. They get to go to Barnes and Noble and pick out a book, and then I think they all go to Steak and Shake and Eat. So that is a huge group, according to Mrs. Holt. That's a really big group. She usually doesn't have that many qualify. And I have to say, that was one thing that I was so pleasantly surprised about in the middle school is those kids read. They carry books around with them. They're in the library. You can go into our library in the mornings, and there's lots of kiddos up there. So we're excited about that. And that's what's going on in the middle school.
Any questions?
Yes, I've got just one real fast one. So I was reading on your events, and it was the core teachers were with the, it was the RPDC, which they've been doing that now for years.
Yes.
And then it's the, MMD, that's the Missouri Model District.
Yes, and which is now switching to DCI, which is District Continuous Improvement, so.
Okay, because we've only been the MMD for like 2 years now?
Yes, the state keeps changing that program. Before it was MMD, it was CW. Before it was that, it was MIMS. It's the same thing. What they keep doing is if they tweak the program a little bit, then I think they qualify for some federal money. So
Okay.
every 2 or 3 years, when a grant runs out,
Right.
they will propose something that looks kind of new, but it's a continuation of the same work.
Okay, so when did we go and jump on board? Was it when they were MMD or like way before?
Oh,
When they were
it's been
MIM?
years and years ago. Like,
Okay.
before I came here, we were a MIMS school, I think, switching to collaborative work school. And it's one of those things you don't really know that you're going from one program to the other. And what it does, it's about the consultants that come and train you. Like this morning, there were the MMD consultants
Okay,
who are also, they cross over with the RRPDC. So 2 of them were from our WALA RPDC.
okay,
So they've been working with our teachers for years, and there's really a nice continuity to our professional development there.
okay, okay.
It's good quality stuff.
Right, and now it's called the DWC?
DCI, District
DCI.
Continuous Improvement, yes.
Okay.
And we are considered a model school amongst the model schools.
Right, so we're a model school. Okay, okay, yes, got it.
We just had a meeting with their regional rep, he's out of Kansas City last week. And they spoke highly of our progress in MMD thus far. We also received reimbursement in terms of dollars from DESI for the work that we do.
Because where should we see like the progress at? In math and English, or math, English, science? Like where should we be seeing the
Well, I
progress
think
at?
multiple, the work's gonna be for how teachers change instruction in the classroom.
Okay,
So it's focused on how teachers deliver
So
instruction.
this is
It's
not
focused
about-
collaborating in teams, it's focused on data-based decision-making. So it's really more focused on teachers changing the way they deliver instruction.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you. Bobby?
Yeah, as well as the other buildings, our building got hit hard by the flu, and I was pleasantly surprised that we were above 90% for February. The last week of February, we were in the 80s, and the last 2 days of February, we were down around 82%. But it has rebounded. We were up in the low 90s today and most of last week. Spring field trips are filling up the calendar. Bass Pro, Wonders of Wildlife, Mammoth Spring, Arkansas. Those are the top 2 that come to mind. But giving kiddos a lot of experiences that they may not otherwise have the opportunity to do. We're preparing for MAP testing as well, getting the schedule set. We've flipped our specials schedule so that 4th grade can test in the mornings instead of going to specials in the mornings. So we appreciate the other grade levels cooperating with that schedule flip for those 4 days. And our different grade levels have been having their spelling bees. 2nd grade was having theirs this morning. And there'll be, I believe, 4 students from each grade level and 1 alternate that qualifies for the Howell County Spelling Bee on April 18th. Some past events that we're celebrating, the book fair was last week. highly successful. Muffins with Moms was on Friday, 320 moms to our best estimate. I don't know if Mandy shed a tear for it being her last one.
I did. But of course, he informed me that middle school's gonna have it, so it's all good.
That was news to me, but we'll work on it.
Great idea.
It is a really good time to have, opportunity to have moms and, you know, of course, we have dads in as well, but just to have parents in our building to see what's going on. This morning, we had our third quarter Rise and Shine. We recognized 50 students for being kind-hearted, and it was well attended as well, so.
Any questions for Bobby?
One thing, and I'd just like to add, with the bout of illness that was going through our school system a week or two back, and we've been monitoring the ADA, as Mr. Cottongill had mentioned. Now, I've been having Mr. Wagner send the ADA to me for every grade level every day. And as of today, every grade level, all 12 grades were above 90%. So it appears that we've gotten through the worst part of the illness. Spring break's coming at a good time. And so maybe everybody can even get more healthy between now and the time we return from spring break, so that's a good thing. We continue to get notifications from DESE and from the Missouri State Department of Health and Environment on the coronavirus and issues that we need to be aware of on that. We continue to be vigilant in terms of how we disinfect our buildings and work with our custodians to do that. We have had to my knowledge, one confirmed case in Missouri. And so that's kind of where we are at this point in time. So we continue to monitor that closely. DESE seems to be on top of it in terms of sending instructions and best practices out to school districts. And so we'll continue to monitor that, and if anything should change on that, I'll let you know. As far as hours for the school calendar, we're still sitting at about 10,000, or not 10,000. Well, that would be like multiple years. 1,048 hours, and we need 1,044. So at this point, we're not in makeup mode, assuming we don't have to lose another day. I'm kind of hoping winter's gone, and then we can just kind of, be able to get through the rest of the school year without any more days lost or time lost. That's where we are.
Good. All right, we'll move on. Mr. Walden, Mr. Talbot, you guys have got a presentation for us?
Yeah, Bryce and Katie are actually going to start us off first.
Great.
Yes.
Do you want the PowerPoint, or do you want the website?
PowerPoint, please.
All right, so I'm Bryce Freya, and this is Katie Rothermich. We're the president and vice president of the Willow Springs FFA, and we're here tonight to talk to you a little bit about what we've done this school year and the progress that we've made within our chapter.
Our most recent event that we have had is FFA Week, like Mr. Spence mentioned. We started out the week by attending Pomona Christian Church that Sunday. Members showed up in their official dress and attended church, so that's how we kicked off FFA Week. And then that Monday, it was Teach Ag Day, and students throughout the day went to different grade levels and showed them where their food came from. So with second graders, we made pizzas. Actually, you got pizza rolls due to the time, but we got pizza rolls to show them where their bread and their meat and their cheese comes from. And with preschoolers, we did a coloring book and taught them about farm animals, so that was fun. A big thing was our petting zoo. We had, preschool through 5th come up to the ag building?
There was 500 students that came to that.
500 students came up to our ag building. We had cows, pigs, chickens, goats, a Watusi. I mean, that was pretty cool. A big thing we did this year was a teacher breakfast. We showed up at 6 o'clock that morning and started cooking. It was a lot of fun. A lot of teachers came out to it. They really appreciated it, and it was a lot of fun. So this summer we have a bunch of livestock shows at the county fairs. We have kids who show pigs and heifers, or steers, I think. And trap shoot. Bryce can tell you more about it. He shoots trap. I don't really do that. But
The trap shooting is something that I've done since I was a freshman. It's just a really fun activity, especially for people who grow up in an area like I do, who like to go out and shoot trap. We go all over the place. We went to Lynn, we went to Rover. There's just a bunch of different shoots that you can go to and compete.
we had a back to school barbecue this year. kind of like kicked off the school year is a good foot to start off on. Our Green Hand Induction Night, that's kind of to introduce the freshmen, upcoming freshmen into FFA and like what all it has to offer them. Our cross country and football games, that's like parking cars and picking up trash after. This year we went to Wardak Farms and Farm Fest in Springfield. Wardak, you get to go to a bunch of different stations and learn about different careers that the agriculture industry has to offer. National Convention was a lot of fun this year. We went in October. A group of us spent a week in Indianapolis, so that was a lot of fun. Fun things happen. That happens in Indianapolis can stay there, right?
And what you learned is more important.
Our fruit fundraiser was a big thing this year. That's like where a lot of our money for like where am I going with this?
Trips and conventions.
Trips, and yeah, that's where a lot of our money comes from. So, and the big thing is 4 state degrees this year. That is a lot of work and time that students put in. Me and Bryce are receiving ours, and Ashley and Grant Kelly. So it's a lot of time spent at the ag building. A lot of time putting work into that. So paid off, and we get to go to state convention next month and receive those. So we're really excited.
All right, up next, we just have a few pictures that we'd like to share with you from the activities we've done this year. These right here, these are all from FFA Week. This is where the students in the elementary school came to our ag building and they saw, this is the Watusi Katie was talking about. There was a chicken, a horse. This is actually Clarice Vanderbilt's senior project. And she sat down and talked to all of these students about different areas of agriculture. So that was a really cool deal right there because they were able to be informed more about the ag industry and hopefully prepare them for a future in ag if they so desire. This is also from FFA Week. This here is our teacher breakfast that we worked over. Like Katie said, we got there at like 6 o'clock in the morning and cooked for an hour and a half straight. So it was a lot of fun too. It was a lot more fun than I expected, to be honest with you. Just cutting up, having a good time with everybody, talking to the members that showed up. It was a good bonding experience for everybody. This again is Clarice talking to all the kids in the elementary about different areas of agriculture. And this is FFA Sunday. This is where some members went to church at Pomona Christian. They had a good time there. That was a good way to kick off the beginning of FFA Week. Here's some more pictures of the teacher breakfast. This is our floriculture team. Here's some projects that's going on in the ag building. This is Brody McKee and Trevor Orbeck, and they're working on a shed which is currently sitting in the parking lot up at the ag building. It's looking really nice at this point right now. This is the Green Hand Motivational Conference. We had a bunch of freshman members attend that. That was back in January. They learned a lot about leadership within the agriculture industry at that, and that was a good experience for them. And these right here are some different shop projects that we've done throughout the year. This here is a fire pit that we've made for somebody, I'm not sure who. And they were dissecting a deer tract.
Mm-hmm. Ruminant digestive tract.
A ruminant digestive tract for a deer. So that was really educational for these people. Again, here's some different activities throughout the year. This was the back to school barbecue where we had a deer fry. So that was fun. No, that's not the back to school barbecue. That's the deer fry that we had back in November.
Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah,
Thanksgiving
deer fry.
Yes, that's what that was. This is some of the kids that went to National Convention. Don't pay attention to my goofy expression on my face. And yeah, these right here is back from the summer where a few kids from our chapter attended the state FFA leadership camp, and they all had a really good time there. So now what I'd like to talk to you about is our building and program updates. We've had a lot of changes within the last year to our ag program as a whole. First of all, our greenhouse class, they caulked and sealed the greenhouse at the ag building from insects, and it also made the production of different plants more efficient. They repaired the old hydroponic system. We installed a fully automated irrigation system, which entails different drip irrigation systems, spray tables, and propagation tables. And this allows us to, instead of having to hand water all of the different plants in there, we can focus more on the plant science aspect of the education within that certain class. In the shop, we've cleaned, serviced, and repositioned equipment. There was a lot of equipment that had various small issues with it that we were able to teach different members how to fix, which is a big part of any shop class, learning how to repair equipment so that you can better service that stuff whenever you need to. This included repairing the plasma table, 6 MIG welders, and 4 stick welders. Finally, another class I'd like to talk to you about is the biotechnology, engineering, and animal and plant science class. This class has remodeled a vacant room in the ag building into a science lab room. That's been coming along really nicely. They've been working hard on that throughout the year, and I believe it'll turn out really good whenever it's done. We've purchased lab equipment to match industry and college standards because this class is actually a cross-curriculum with biological and medical science class, which is dual enrollment through the University of Missouri in West Plains. Mr. Talbert teaches this class. He's been doing a really good job throughout it. A lot of kids, they're being prepared basically for a future in a medical career, whether it relates to agricultural or not. So that's been really beneficial to them. So now Mr. Walden and Mr. Talbot are going to talk to you a little bit about the student demographics throughout the year.
Yeah. So,
I'm ready.
switch it. Thanks, guys. Just messing up. Yeah, we'll keep this short and sweet because we know you guys have a long night and you don't want to hear us gab all night. But talking about that biotechnology class, we're trying to integrate as much as we possibly can up at the Ag Hill. How can we integrate our sciences to the science department down at the high school? And the biological or bioengineering and animal science classes, they're both dual credit classes through West Plains and through Springfield, have been able for us to integrate those sciences that they're learning in their normal science classes. So students are like learning the science class, and they're not really understanding what they're learning. Up at the Hill, we're actually able to apply what they're learning in Miss Wild's classroom for a career either in animal science, plant science, or pharmaceuticals, nursing, biotechnology. So we're actually able to integrate a lot of those. And I want to put out to this VA3, which is the one that has the state seal on the top really quick. The reason why we're switching a lot of these classes up and why we're introducing a lot of these dual credit classes is because we as ag teachers, we have to do a interest demographic form. And we can see that a lot of students, actually, I apologize, the VA2, the one with the bar graphs, my bad. That VA2, if you want to look, and this is the year 2019, it's that second pie graph right there. I know it's kind of hard to see. That second bar graph right there, 41, which is 39% of our members actually have an interest in animal science. So they're either going to get a career in animal science or vet science, or they're going to live on the farm with mom and dad working on their livestock production. 24 members or 23% of the members have an interest in some kind of food science or natural resource conservation, which is what we do to integrate that biotechnology class because it encompasses a lot of other classes. 14, 9, and 11%, the rest of that is going to be some form of plant science curriculum. So when we're moving and creating classes and trying to integrate what we want to do with our instruction, these demographics that our students' interest and what they want to do as a career is constantly changing. So we change our classes to meet our students' interest because it's our jobs to ensure that our students are college and career ready and that they're prepared for the life force.
And this is also a state form that we send into DESE. So they also have a kind of like a poll survey for all of the students in Missouri enrolled so they can kind of get a whole Missouri demographic. So if you ever see statistics about agricultural students and where they're going to be placed, career cluster wise, those are the results that we send into them for that larger survey. So it helps us choose our classes, and it also helps the state provide curriculum to ag teachers based off that information.
And our students, they're loving our classes that we're teaching, and they're actually like starting to create their own projects, which if you take ag in high school, you have to have a project. You have to work for somebody, do a research project, do a community-based project, or you have to own your own operation. Kitty, for example, she owns her own cattle and livestock, and Bryce has, well, you have several operations, don't you? You have beef, and you have a job. And we look at those numbers, and we see how that affects the community. So if you want to go to the VA3 now, the one earlier, the one with the state form.
And those of you who don't know, that project that they have to do is called a supervised agricultural experience. It's part of the three-circle model for a complete ag program. So you have FFA instruction, classroom instruction experience, and you have the SAE. That SAE is the third link that kind of ties it all together, and that's what they learn in our classes. They're taking and applying it at home with their own projects. So, for instance, I've got these two here. I can point them out. They both work. Bryce is currently working for Barn Hollow Vet right now, so he wants to be a vet. And so that's part of his SAE. He's getting paid for that. He's learning how to keep those records. So we're actually keeping a receipt or a record of receipts and expenditures. If people own equipment, they learn how to monitor depreciation and actually do the financial side of running a business. And they do this on their own, applying what they learn in class to that experience. And what Mr. Talbert's about to talk to you on that VA3 form is a wholesome summary of all of our students and their SAE programs.
Yeah, so summary-wise, this is just for the year 2019, so it doesn't clear 2020. For the year 2019, we have about 20 students in our program. They own their own business in some way or form. 28% of them, 28 students actually have a job, have a documented job, which means they receive a check, they get taxes taken out. I'm going to jump down here to line 6. $79,442 is the amount of money that our students that own an actual business bring into the community. So that's how much that they make. Is $79,442. Placement-wise, which means is they get a paycheck, that's $59,302. So a little over $100,000 is what our students alone are bringing into the community, because they're going to spend that on McDonald's or at Wagner's, and they're going to bring that back to the community for Belleville Springs, the town flourish. And that back page is just a unit and scope. It kind of gives us what our head count is for cattle and livestock. We have over 100 cattle our livestock own, and I'm not going to go through and count all of them out. If you have any extra time, or you're just bored and want to look at state reports, which I know everyone wants to do as a pastime, gives you some hours of how many students have worked, like 958 hours worked in animal systems, and it breaks it down even more than what I want to get into.
Yeah, and that's another form that we send to the state. As you can see on the front page, we have to have that signed by superintendent, instructors, and stuff like that. So that's something that we try to keep everybody in the loop on, and we're happy to include you in the loop on that as well, so you can kind of see some awesome things that our students are doing. And I'd be happy to show you how those numbers come about a little bit further in the presentation. Again, we don't want to keep you all night. We know that you have families and stuff just as we do. So those numbers are generated from the entries the students put in. So we actually purchased the system this year, which I'm going to transition to. If you want to go to that website, I'll show you. Might have to relog into it. So, yeah, probably sign in, yeah. You should have saved it. There it goes. Can you look into that? So the old-fashioned way, which is still a great way of doing things, all the record books were kept on paper and pencil, and then we used those forms as well to get students awards in Missouri, for instance, the state degree. That is completely and solely based off their record book. So each student has an individual record book. Before we do that, I'm going to kind of show you what our VA1 looks like. Looks like we're going a little bit out of order, but that's just kind of the way it worked in our presentation here. So this is AET, which is the Agricultural Experience Tracker. It's something that we just tried this year. Missouri is about half and half. They're the old record book system, and then they're AET. And this actually communicates with our state degree worksheets, so all the paperwork that we have to do to get a student a state degree, which is one of the most, top awards that you can get in FFA, right? This actually does a lot of that work for us, as well as for the American degree, which is the top award that you can get in the FFA. So this actually, we can pull the numbers through students' profiles on here. Each student has an individual profile, and we can pull those numbers through and create these state reports and fill out awards and stuff like that, award applications, which are really beneficial. I could teach a workshop on this all day long to show you the ins and outs of it, but This has really been worth our time. I think the subscription for us was what, 200
It's
something?
$269.
Which came out of our general supplies account. We budgeted for it.
And just the state degrees alone has saved us about 20 hours.
Oh, yeah.
This
I mean,
program has easy.
how many hours do you think we worked on your state degree? Granted,
Many.
A lot.
so these two students are older students, and so when we got here, they weren't converted into the system, so we had to backtrack all of their records into the system, just to make that system more streamlined for them. But I'm gonna show you kind of, before we talk a little bit more about that, how we log our extra contract hours. So as you know, ag teachers are 12-month contracts. Some of you probably don't know what we do in the summertime, and that's okay. I want to tell you, all right? So I want to justify that extended contract so that we continue to have that, as most ag teachers in the state of Missouri are 12-month unless they're like a half-day teacher or something like that. And so we do a ton of stuff in the summertime, which accounts for a lot of that extended contract. But I'm just going to show you some figures here of what we have worked this year, not counting your summer stuff. I don't think you've logged your summer stuff.
No.
Okay, it's hard to backtrack sometimes, especially when you're in the heat of the moment. So this actually has a bunch of different facets to it. So I can show you our log of hours. So we are trying to stay on top of each other in regard to logging our extra contract hours. So this is anything outside of our 7:30 to 3:15 window, right? That's our contracted hours, and our extended contract is the same for the summertime. And so anything outside those hours, we log in here. So you can kind of see, and we can also justify that extended contract. So this is a combination of Mr. Talbert and I's hours, and right here is our out of contract. We don't log a lot of in-contract hours because that means we would be logging every single school day in there, and it would just, it takes too much time. So between the two of us, and I haven't logged a couple of events yet, he has logged the summer stuff, we're at 288.5 hours outside of contract hours. Now that's
Since January 1st.
since January 1st. Yeah, so that's contract, so that's like any kind of contest practice, which, Katie, what time are you gonna be at practice in the morning?
6:45.
6:45 in the morning, so that's 6:45 in the
Will all
morning.
your team members, they'd be there at that time?
We've been struggling with a
I'll
couple
be there about
of
7 actually.
Yeah.
I'll be there, but I'll be late.
Okay, so any of that extra contract time where we are putting in the work for our job, but it's not within normal hours, we log in here. So for instance, I'm actually gonna show you how we do one of these, and this is really convenient too, because we can do this from our cell phone, which when we're at our contest, like we were on Friday and Saturday, at the end of that Saturday, when I get home at my house at 7 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I should have logged that in my computer before I came home, but I just wanted to be home, I can sit in my recliner and I can add that to it, which is really convenient for us and has really saved us a lot of time. You can also sort by teacher, so if you wanted to see per teacher, that way. So to add a new one, I'm sorry, I'm gonna lean over here.
You're fine.
Okay. So I'm gonna put for both of us, because we were both there, starting time, I was at the Ag Building at 5 a.m. on Saturday. That was the wrong place for that, I'm sorry. 5 a.m. in contract hours, I'm not gonna put that because it's Saturday, they're all out of contract, so 5 a.m., what time do we get back on Saturday?
3:30.
3:30, so from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, so 8 hours-ish. So I put in 8 hours there. I don't actually remember how many students we had, 20?
There was 18.
18 students, so we can log the number of students there. I am horrible about putting mileage in there, but I mean, we've traveled thousands of miles already. And this actually shows the number of miles that we have, so that's really convenient when we're making a justification for why do you have a Suburban every day this week? Well, you know, because to do this portion of our job, we have to have that transportation. And then we can choose the type, so that was a FFA competition, subject name, CFO. That was our workshop at College of the Ozarks, and you could put in a brief description, which I'm going to save you the time. And then I can click save, and that will now have added that 8-hour mark to both of our timesheets. So that's just one short, easy way that this has really made our lives a lot easier. And we use this for our VA1, which is a state report that we don't actually turn in. It's just a way, like, if you guys are saying, hey, what the heck are you guys even doing in the summertime? We're never here, we never see you there. We can pull this up and say, hey, here's everything that we have done. If you have any questions about any of this, we'll be happy to answer it. So a lot of teachers just fill in the VA1's, the state report that they issue. It's just an Excel sheet that you can fill in. This is the same thing, but on this way that I can share it to you. So, if you guys have any questions about any of that, this program, like I said, I could teach you a workshop on all of this. And so each, like I said, each student has an account on there, so all the VA2 and VA3 numbers we can actually go in and monitor every student's account from our chapter account here. So I'm just going to pick on Bryce here, just give you a quick example. Bryce Frigga, this is what he sees on his computer. And so I can go to his SAE manager, and you can see all of his management. Disregard those numbers, and that bottom one doesn't match any numbers. This program's a little tricky with the numbers there, but you can actually go through and I can see all the financial entries that he has put in for Bryce Frigga cattle. Those are the cattle that he manages and maintains out of the Frigga herd. And so we can see all those records. And this student has put in all those records and put the time in to learn how to keep all these records accurately, carefully and accurately. And then that leads up to them getting those awards that are, make Willow Springs look awesome when we have 4 state degrees. People walking across the stage in front of 10,000 FFA, Missouri FFA members, shaking hands with the Missouri FFA advisor and getting that cool chain to put on their jacket that they'll have forever. So that's that. There was one more thing on the PowerPoint.
Yeah, so course rotations.
Yes, go to that.
We're talking about course rotations. We're talking about the VA2. We're going to change our classes up. We have a little bit of an issue. We've noticed that kids have had ag construction for 2 years, or they've had an animal science for 2 years in a row. So we're switching up course rotations. And we're kind of doing this off a whim of what we need to do, but it's not set and permanent, which means we can change it. Which is why we're coming to you guys today to talk about an advisory board. We as ag educators typically will meet with an advisory board with about 3 people. We meet 3 times a year, we meet 3 times a year. Out of those advisory boards, we meet once with the CTE group, which is what we did. Mr. Spins already talked about us meeting with an CTE advisory board. That counts as one of our visits. We need 2 more visits to fully round out a full state, like what DESE wants us to do is 3 times a year. Right now we're meeting up once a year. So we need approval from the school board to approve an advisory board. What an advisory board would do is that they would advise me and Mr. Walden, because we're at school a lot, we don't know what's going on in the community all the time, but our advisory board does. It's going to be full of 1 school board member, a teacher, a couple parents, and a couple community leaders. And this is going to give me and Mr. Walden, we have no leadership role in this whatsoever, but it's going to give me and Mr. Walden an idea of what the community sees about our chapter, what we can change about our chapter to make it better, and what classes we can offer. So right now, we're just going to offer student demographics. We don't know what the community standards are. We know that we're going to teach these classes this year. So we're teaching animal science, biotech, landscaping, construction. And everything that's in bold is changing. So animal science is going to vet science, construction 1, construction 2. We're teaching food science and technology next year because we have 10 students interested in food science. We're going over crop science, ag economics and marketing, ag power and ag mechanics. That's just going off their demographics, but we want to know what you guys as industry leaders want us to teach. What do we want to tell our students or prepare our students for in the community of Willow Springs? So an advisory board, we need approval by the school board member for them to meet at the school. It'd be two nights a year. Typically it's going to be after school. And it's just to help us keep our ear to the ground, to give us more advice on what we need to do and how to improve our chapter. So and that list is going around right now.
And then with this course rotation too, that's, we're trying to meet the demand obviously with industry and changing industry and how we can better improve our students. And if we just stick with 1 class rotation every single year, it doesn't really do that much justice to our kids that are in boat tech in the afternoons and can only take 1 elective class in the morning time, and they've already had ag power twice, right? It doesn't do them any good to take that class 3 times in a row or even twice in a row, you know what I mean? So being able to rotate a lot of these classes allows them to take a broader spectrum of classes and prepare them better for whatever career path they choose to go. So, and the advisory board is to help with kind of not just our course rotations, but also, if somebody comes in and says, hey, we think that you need this tooling in your shop to better prepare students for this kind of industry, or we're seeing a big shift for we need pipe fabricator or something. I don't have a pipe vendor in my shop. Maybe that's something that we should look into getting, and then they can kind of help us and advise us into that route. So they would do a lot of things, and it would also help us justify the purchases of things to improve the program throughout our enhancement grant cycles and stuff like that. So it would just, instead of just he and I making the decision and saying we want a pipe vendor, we could say, yes, this is something that would improve the educational quality at our school, backed by our advisory committee, and then so there's many facets to the advisory committee besides just choosing course rotations.
You guys have any questions about our chapter or anything that we do? Any questions about what we presented on? Anything that the school board sees that we need to change as a chapter or improve on?
Dean, look like you got a question.
I've got a question on the advisory council. Is that something that you'll rotate members in and out every, is there
3 years.
Every 3 years.
You'll go with a whole new advisory council all at once, or will that be staggered?
It would be staggered. So we would have to ask a quarter of those members to do a 2-year term.
Right.
And the next quarter to do a 4-year term. That way we get our first rotation in.
Okay.
Then after that, it'll be every 3 years they'll
Yep.
rotate out.
Good question. Any other questions on that?
How are you gonna select those guys?
We just kind of discussed on, well, Desi provides a list, and we discussed within that list of, I guess, categories like beef industry, professional. And so I thought of John Orvac. I think he's our beef guy on there because he works for Stony Creek Ranch. We just thought like a parent, so we thought of a parent that we got a member in good standing. The parent would be willing to assist with that. Just different community members that it recommends, local business owner, like it provides a category for each individual recommendation for an advisory member. And then we just went through between the two of us and said, okay, I think this student or this person would be good for that. And that's kind of what, I mean, if you think that there's better recommendations on that list that you'd like to see.
No, I didn't mean to imply that. I was really talking about how you go about in the rotation. So how do you pick the next guy, the next round, the next group?
So like if John Ulrich was a beef producer, when he retires, we would have someone else that has a large enough beef herd or is influential enough in the community that has a beef operation.
So would that be done by the council, or would that again be done?
Yeah, so the council would
At
nominate.
that point, the council itself would be
Right.
Yes.
Starting initially.
self-renewing.
Yes.
Okay.
Starting initially would be our recommendations.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, is the advisory council, is that something that has to be approved by the board every time you make a change, or just a one-time deal?
Just a one-time
Just a
deal.
one-time deal. We really just wanted to include you guys in the loop, and that way you know what's happening there, and that way you're not like, advisory board, what? What does that even mean? So
Yeah.
that way, if you ever have any questions, you know, you can come talk to us, or that you're already in the loop, so.
Be as transparent as we
Do we have any
possibly can
policy?
with y'all.
Do we have any policy directives around advisory boards? That is to say, it's not a subset of this board, right? So it wouldn't be an impact there.
It's not a subset of this.
Well, we have the one advisory committee meeting with the CTE program, but I think we discussed in our CTE program meetings that, you know, we really enjoy having that meeting, and that's a good meeting we want to continue to have because it's good for our community. But honestly, I feel like it's a presentation because it goes very quickly, and, you know, there's no like advice back and forth.
And for-
There's a little bit at the end, we have
Yeah.
some discussion, but
And
we'd like
for
to
what
see
we
some more.
do and the amount that we do, we really need a lot of advice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're gonna go crazy.
You know, one of the things that, and it's not just FFA, current tech ed programs have been, especially those that receive Carl Perkins money, have been somewhat expected to have advisory councils in place for years. As a matter of fact, our business department at the high school has an advisory council in place. They just met, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's not an unusual thing for FFA. It's kind of unusual to come to the board and have the board approve it, which is fine. I think that's something maybe the National FFA organization would like to see happen, which is okay. There's no problem with that. But in answer to your question, it's not a subset of the Board of Education, although they would like to have a board member serve in that capacity. I think that's fine. So to me, it's just somewhat of a formality for these gentlemen to be able to tell the National FFA organization that this Board of Education has approved the existence of an FFA advisory council.
Anybody have any more questions on that?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all gonna stay and listen to us talk about policies for a while? Really? You're more than welcome.
Unless you need us to, I mean, we'll be here for moral support.
You don't need it. You wanna go over policies, Bill?
Oh, yeah.
Good job, guys, thank you.
Thank you very much. Get some sleep, catch up on the daylight savings time.
Stuff together. All right,
What time do you guys usually get done?
about 11 o'clock or so.
Tonight.
No, usually we're done in a couple hours.
Well,
Might be a little bit longer.
we'd like to extend an invitation to come up to the Ag Building anytime. We got that, I meant to talk on that irrigation system, but I'm not gonna hold you too long. That was actually a grant program to start growing some produce for the school. But if you'd like to see all that stuff, maybe talk some more details, swing by the Ag Building
I
sometime.
thought you were inviting us out for dinner later or something.
I mean, If you're buying,
Oh, okay.
you call me when you're done, I'll put 10 minutes away.
Thanks, Alan. I distributed to you, each of you should have this copy. I put this together today to make this a little more simplified, if we can. We have a lot of policies. You're gonna steal my clicker? Are you kidding me?
It's a nice clicker.
I would have hunted you down for that. To try to make this process a little more simplified, and we have a lot of policies to review tonight, or I'm not sure that the right way to do this is to read through every single policy. I did vet these with the administrative team on just about every area. We spent 2 or 3 admin meetings going over them. I did meet with the subcommittee of the board, Brent Colley and Farrell Graves, and we also went through those in detail. I mean, I think in that case I did read every single one of them. And then I sent them out to the board at large in their entirety last week, although I know that was about a week of really pretty high-class reading. Hopefully you have some questions generated from that. So what I would like to do in the interest of time, most of these are things that we just have to do basically due to change in statute. And I try to change these into multiple areas, all right? Anything that's B's and D's and F's are all about governance or fiscal management, all right? And so that has very little to do, if anything, to do with what happens out in the buildings, all right? The district goals, they recommended that we just get rid of that policy because it's part of the CSIP plan anyway now. As it talks about the school board vacancies, the requirement for the additional hours in board training and development, all those are things that you all knew about that anyway. And then it has a number of different things, revenues from tax sources that may or may not even impact us, but it has to do with the amount of dollars that are paid by taxes from telephone companies. Purchasing in terms of changing the bid requirement from 15,000 to 75,000, and so there's just a number of changes that are due to statute that we just don't have really a whole lot of choice in what we do. Probably the meat of this is when you start getting down into the policies that impact employees, okay? And those are the part that we probably need to spend time on if you have questions. So what I'd like to do, rather than just go through, and I can, if you want to, go through every one, but I'd rather just kind of throw it out to the group and see, are there any specific policies that you have questions about and/or you want to discuss this evening before we actually put them up for a motion to approve here after a while, so. And there are a lot of them. The general trend has to do with 2 or 3 different areas. One has to do with contacting prospective employers of former employees in the event that there's been allegations of sexual misconduct, all right? And they give you 3 different categories in which the law basically states that in these situations, if there is an investigation, the Children's Division, if there's a hearing before the board, the Children's Division did an investigation, or if there was an actual crimes filed, you have no choice but to share that with prospective employers. But it becomes a slippery slope because in some cases when that happens, you may have an employee who will resign prior to having a due process hearing with the Board of Education. In that case, then, if they go out and they look for another job and you're aware that there were allegations, although you didn't have a formal hearing, if you share things in that respect, you may actually be violating that person's rights because it didn't meet one of those 3 categories. So they make it very clear in the policy, if it's something like that and you're just not sure, contact your school attorney and get some direction before you just start telling everybody. And so part of it's that, there's a general trend in here about background checks for volunteers, and we've talked about that administrative team. The statute would require background checks, full-fledged background checks, the same background checks that we do for all of our employees, for any volunteer in our school system, operating on the assumption that they are being left alone with children, all right? That's the key definition there. And if administratively we can assure that that's not happening, then we don't have to necessarily require that background check. Why is that important? Because each background check's how much? 40 bucks, 50 bucks? So, for all the volunteers we have, then the question is going to be, would the district pay for that, or would that fall back on the volunteers? If it fall back on the volunteers, I'd venture to say it's probably going to impact the number of volunteers that we have. All right, so I think that has an impact on it as well. I think, however, that there will be situations that we're going to have to watch very closely administratively, because if we have situations where we have adults traveling out of town with kids overnight, I think it's going to be very difficult to ensure that they'll never be alone with kids, all right? So I think there's going to be situations as the need arises that if we're going to have this event or that event, and we can't make that assurance, that we're going to have to require volunteers to go to that event to get a background check. All right, so we're just gonna have to go with that one and I'd rather do it that way than have a blanket thing saying every volunteer we ever have, I have a background check.
How long does that take from the time you decide you need a background check?
How long
until-
does it take, Mandy?
It doesn't take too long, a couple of days turnaround.
Okay.
So they gotta plan ahead, you know, they
A
gotta
little
get the
bit, but not
volunteers
as
in.
far as what I thought it might
Exactly,
take.
exactly. So you have that, so you have the tone, background checks for volunteers, you have the tone of contacting prospective employers for prior employees, those are two general things in there. Another one has to do, they really recommend that, change in policy, that anytime there is movement internally in the school system, changing jobs, all right, that actually change the compensation and benefits for that person, those should come to the Board of Education for approval. And their concern was that, and they believe that that's always been the case, but many districts don't do that. And so they want to put that in the force of policy to ensure that if you have those changes internally within your system, that those come to the Board of Education, especially if it's a change in position, a change in contract, a change in compensation, a change in benefits. So if there's upward movement, that should come to the Board of Education for approval. So if you notice this evening from the consent agenda, from this point, I'm just going to start putting all changes into the board. That way I don't have to worry about, does this count or does that count? So anytime we're making a movement internally, I'll include that in the consent agenda so that you guys know exactly what's going on in terms of who's going where and who's doing what.
And that's what I thought the policy said, was
Right.
any movement. Doesn't have to be upward, just if they're moving in the district.
In this one here, it states that there's a change in compensation and benefits and contracts. So
Right.
it implies that they're upward, they're moving to a new,
Okay.
completely new position.
Okay,
And so I don't really think that if we have a parent that's moving from position A to position B, that the board really needs to know that, but I think I just want to do them all. So if we're going to make a movement, then I'm just going to let you know what they are. That way, I don't have to determine whether this one should apply and this one shouldn't. And I think you should know where people are moving throughout the district. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially certificated positions. I think that's more important, so. Academic calendar, that talks about the fact, the switch in hours from hours to days. And it talks about makeup time in there as well. It talks about the fact that you cannot start school prior to the 14th day prior to Memorial Day, or any earlier than that. So that's in that one as well. IGAEB requires sexual health instruction, and that's more in terms of, for students in terms of being able to understand what child sexual abuse is, what child abuse is, and to understand the symptoms and the factors, and to know how to report that and the avenues and how to report that. And that now is going to be required, I think, in grades 6 through 12, all right? What I'm unsure of, and hope I get some direction from DESE, is do they require this to be taught every year in grades 6 through 12? Or can we teach it in grade 6 and do it again in grades 9, you know? And so I need to get some direction from DESE in terms of what that means, and some direction in terms of what the content will be. Interestingly enough, they still have the provision in that policy that allows parents to opt out, which seems contradictory to me. Because if you're trying to educate a child in terms of what child sexual abuse or child abuse looks like and to identify the symptoms, why would you allow parents to allow them to opt out of that instruction? It seems odd to me, but they still have that ability to do that. Graduation requirements, I believe that's the one where they can count a computer science course as a math course. Provided they have a computer science course that meets the computer science requirements. We currently do not. However, if you have a student who is having a hard time getting the required 3 units of math, they can substitute computer science for one of those. Typically, it'll probably be computer science substituting for Algebra 2. You still have to do the EOC, right? But it's interesting, they also, if you do that, then the parents have to sign a waiver, knowing or basically saying, we understand that that may impact my son or my daughter's admission into college. Because colleges don't necessarily recognize a computer science course for a math class. So they need to be willing to do that if that's what they want. I'm trying to, doing a lot of these from memory. Is there anything else that, as you were reviewing the policies, that you had specific questions about? I mean, there's really nothing in there earth-shattering or anything to the point that you know, we can discuss about whether or not to put it in there. So what did any of you have anything on any of these? I know, Dean, you're doing a lot of writing over there.
Well, because I'm having a real problem matching up all the lists. So I want to make sure when we have a motion to approve, that I know which ones of these we are approving, because this is the DESI's list.
Right.
And it doesn't match the policies.
Well, what I put in there, that's part of the reason why I gave you this.
Right.
Was to
But
try to
now
put
I'm
those
trying to-
policies that fall under that policy. Because you're right, within those trends, there's like 6 policies that are affected by it.
Right,
And it's
and
very
I get
confusing.
that, but I just want to make sure, because there's a policy here on this, okay, on this list, right? This came from DESI?
Where'd you get this list? What
That
list
that
is
came
this?
from Dusty, and I sent that out to the board.
Okay, but that's not the one in the board packet.
It's not the one on the
Okay,
packet,
okay,
and that's,
fine.
and so there's one on here, GCPD is on this list, which is suspension of professional staff members. It's nowhere.
PD.
Which one?
Yeah, and
It's called GCPD, it's titled suspension of professional staff members, but there's no policy that backs that up. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
you don't
these are
find it
all-
anywhere else,
These are all the policies that they sent me, so it's not in there.
but it's on their
Yeah, I know it's
list.
on
So
their
I want to
list.
make sure we're not
Right.
approving that document,
Yeah.
because it's approving things
And I don't
that we
even-
haven't seen.
Yeah, I don't even see that document in any of their stuff. So-
Right, so I'm just trying to make sure
Right.
that if we're going over this list in the book, I'm assuming we're gonna approve the list in the board book, right?
Correct.
Our motion will be based on that list?
Yeah.
Let's wanna make sure it matches up with it.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
That's fine.
So I'm sorry, where did you get this list at? Was it like in our email?
This is the policy update overview that Desi sends out, and I believe I sent that out and I sent all the policies out. It's a summary of all the policies. And then you have the individual one, which had the policy in its entirety.
Right.
Right?
I got the one with all the policies, so that got sent out?
It was part of the attachment as well. And then you had all these there, all these reviews. Where PD.
All right. Now I'm matching the board book
Okay.
to the list, GCPD.
All right.
I don't see it. I don't see it on this list.
GCPD,
GCPD.
on the one that I did. And the reason that it's not on that list, because it's not on any of those policies that Desi sent to me, even though it's on their summary sheet.
GCPD is the same, okay, gotcha.
You understand what I'm saying?
Well,
It's
but
in their
it's in the
summary
board
sheet. Yeah, it's in the board book, and they mention their summary sheet, but they don't give us a policy that goes with it.
Okay, well, I mean,
So
we're
I don't want
not gonna
those-
approve it, right?
No, we're only gonna approve the ones that I have listed on this sheet here.
So, in our board book, we should delete GCPD.
Well, when they mention that in the summary, what do they say about it? They just has it listed.
It just says, it's just on the list.
Policy include changes related to
But
sheriff.
I don't wanna approve the list that's in the board book, because it's in there and we don't have it. We haven't reviewed it,
You mean in the packet here?
the board packet.
Right. Well, let me look here.
And make sure we're in the right book.
We haven't had one in a while with this many
Okay.
policies in it, surely you.
I don't see in the board book GCPD.
Okay, so the policy update overview.
Right, it's not in the individual one, the reference copies.
No, it's not.
No, I just did
That's
the
exactly
overview. I
correct.
just did the overview, but the only policies that we have that are up for approval are the ones that are actually
That's the
listed.
same overview.
The reference copies, correct.
Okay.
Not what they have listed in the overview.
This is the same as what's in the book.
Well, evidently not, because some of the reference copies that they mentioned there are not in here. So why Desi put that in their overview, I don't know, without putting the reference copy in the book. You understand what I'm saying?
I do, what I wanna know is which one of the, I have 3 lists.
What I want
wanna know
you,
which
what
one
I'm
we're in.
asking the board to approve
This one.
is everything listed, that one right there.
Okay,
And which corresponds to all the reference copies that are in the book,
okay.
all right? So I'm basically saying disregard that.
Gotcha, so we're not
All right.
going to do anything
The purpose of
with
this was to just to help
GCPD.
give you a quicker overview of it, so.
Well,
I just wanna make,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I like totally skipped over that. I'm like,
Did you see it? Did you open your email?
I just now.
It's in there, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was like, that's the part I read, that was like the cliff notes of the policy
That's
review.
why I sent it out, because I know you want the whole policies, and I know you want the cliff notes.
Right.
So I sent that out to try and make everybody happy.
Yeah, no, I read every daggone policy and I'm like, oh, well,
That's
that's.
the one, that has all the policies on it that I want you to approve this evening.
alright, so tell me again where GCPF is.
GCPF is under F, GBLB, second one down is
Yeah,
GCPF.
GCPF, thank you, it's the E's and the F's that are.
Yeah, I just kept all the G's together and all the F's
Good
together.
man.
just trying to organize this a little bit.
GDPB. GDPE, got it, okay. I'm just marking off.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, so then just to back up here, just to recap, on the criminal background checks, we're not gonna make volunteers do that unless administration knows they're gonna be left alone with a kid.
Absolutely. And we had a long conversation about that at the administrative team.
And what was
Because
that?
we understand the negative impact of requiring every single volunteer to have a $50 or $45 background check. The impact would be they just wouldn't do it. For instance, we have our mentoring program for our kindergarten program. Had a long conversation with Mr. C, and he assured me that at no time will mentors ever be left alone with their mentee. All right? Well, if that's the case, and they're in general setting, there's no need for every one of them to have a $45 volunteer background check.
Right.
In situations where we can't control that, for instance, we have a group of kids going out of town, and you have 6 or 7 adult sponsors, and it's an overnight trip. To me, there's a chance that, no, not a chance, to me, I think it's going to be very difficult to ensure that at least an adult will never be alone with a child. So I think in those individual situations, we're going to have to require those background checks to happen. And the part that we haven't determined yet is who's going to pay for that.
So, it sounds like you have a criteria where you're gonna have a second layer of requirement, right? So, now, let me just give you an example. I've been to Twin Pines how many times? And it's almost inevitable when you go to Twin Pines that you're gonna go into the bathroom and chase somebody out. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be an overnight in Texas to make that happen, right?
That's true.
So where are we drawing that line? I mean, obviously, the kindergarten program, and there's some other programs in there, right?
Yeah, I don't think we've sat down and said, okay, this event will, this event won't, this event will. I think so many of them we're going to have to determine as we go. I think a lot of that is dependent upon the amount of structure that we have with that particular program. You know, if we have, to me, there's a lot of structure with the kindergarten mentoring program, but there's less structure when you have a lot more students and the number of adults to those students. You have 50 or 60 students and you have maybe 10 adults, it becomes much more difficult, especially outside the school environment, to make that assurance.
So are we going to say that anytime you leave the school grounds, that the risks go up enough, that that's gonna be, I'm just saying, what are we gonna be?
We can sit down and we can develop criteria as administrative team, but as it stands right now, I'm pretty much leaving it up to these folks to make that decision. And we don't have criteria in place. If A happens, we're doing B.
Okay.
But it's going to fall upon them to make sure that whatever activity it is, if they think that there's an issue, we're going to have to get background checks.
Well, I think what Dean's saying is if you've got a field trip with 80 kids and you've got 10 or 12 volunteers going with them, you can't guarantee that where they go somewhere, one of them might end up over here by herself with a kid. So I think that's probably the...
And that's the situation where they would have to have those 10 or 12 chaperones get a background check.
You wouldn't, you have to do that to make sure you have shepherd policy.
That's right. And, you know, I mean, a good example, I mean, I tell you what, and Marty would know this more, Marty would probably know this more, but prom might be a good example. You know, if we have volunteers at prom, we may be expecting those volunteers to get background checks.
I would say this is what I give my teachers as a directive on field trips. I tell them if they need chaperones to use teacher parents first, try to use school employees. So there's very few cases where it might be a parent on a volunteer. So.
And I know many times teachers and volunteers, I'm sure too, but we'll just make a practice to not be alone with the student, to make sure that you've got, that there's two of you with you know, students. You can't always do that, but you can sure avoid a large percentage of possibilities of it.
Officer Moore does a background check on all the volunteers. It's not as extensive as the Identitex one that we do on subs and employees, but Officer Moore does do one on all the volunteers, so.
But for the purpose of that statute, that policy, they're requiring the same background check
They
for
are, in
volunteers
fact.
as they do employees.
Right. And in fact, there's a sentence here, let me just read it to you. Volunteers who chaperone students on overnight trips or are sponsors, advisors, or coaches of district-sponsored activities must satisfactorily complete a criminal background check. That's not ambivalent. That's not saying
Right.
some can, some can't. That's what we're
Must.
looking at. I mean, it's.
That's
No,
overnight.
that's an overnight trip. Well, that plus sponsors or.
Well, I think it says volunteers who chaperone students on overnight trips or are sponsors, advisors, or coaches of district-sponsored activities.
And would,
That's two different things,
and would you
right?
say that our sponsors, advisors, all those are paid
They're all
employees? So
employees.
they all,
So they all
they're all
have
subject to the
background
background
checks.
check anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Because our sponsors are school employees.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Yes, yes. 'Cause
So they've already had it.
That's right.
But they're not volunteers then.
That's correct. They're not. But on the other hand, though, sponsors on overnight trips may or may not be paid employees. You know, we get people to come help sponsor overnight trips, all right? So in those situations, if they're not a paid employee of the district and they're going on an overnight trip, yeah, I think they need to have a background check.
But if we had a volunteer coach that was, continually assisting on a sports team, they would need the.
Well, they get a background
They
check
get a background
anyway.
They would do it anyway.
I just want to make sure we're not approving something and then not doing it.
Right,
That's my only concern here.
yeah.
And then in that same policy, it says, applicants, volunteers are responsible for the cost of the criminal background check, but the district may later reimburse the person at the district's discretion.
Right.
So, the policy is that we don't have to pay for the criminal background check. We
Correct.
may reimburse it.
Correct. That's right. We don't have to.
Right.
We don't have to.
But I
So
think if we pay for one, I
You
think we
can't
need to pay for all of
them.
them.
We
Right,
reimburse
that's
all
right.
employees.
Do we know how many volunteers we have?
Or it depends too, that if we do it,
Volunteers?
And I don't mean the whole list that never gets
Right.
updated. I'm saying active. Do we have anybody
Well-
on that
A
number?
lot, I don't.
yeah, we have a lot. I mean, my gosh, that line,
We just
Rotary
approved like
thing
that,
alone's
that's all.
got like 25 or 30,
Right.
Where are they going with this? To your question. Yeah, but a way that we could possibly do that is, if it's tied to a club or an organization, then that could be paid for by the club or the organization as a cost, additional cost to the trip. If you need 5 or 6 volunteers and it's an overnight trip, then you're gonna have to basically pay for the background check,
Right.
right? And that's, if you need volunteers, it's gonna be pretty hard to get them and tell them to shell out the $50 or whatever it is to get a background check. So that's gonna have to be the cost of putting on the trip. So if they do fundraising or whatever, they might wanna include that cost in there.
Right.
So all volunteers, all overnight trips, right? It's clear about that?
I
So
think
Marty,
so.
do you have anything on prom?
Here's the deal with prom. Chaperones are only school employees. They may take their spouse as a guest, but Mrs. Cochran instructs chaperones, starting this year, that the school staff needs to take care of any kind of issues. So they have a guest, but that's not a,
So the guest doesn't have any
that's not a
chaperone
sponsor.
responsibility.
They're just a guest.
Be like me going with Jamie.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I don't have any more
And that's
Did
questions.
you find were you able to look at all the policies?
I got some of the thoughts
I
I
didn't,
got.
I didn't slip any of them in there on here.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go first.
So on all transfers, I'm talking about GDC now, which is under G.
Right, support staff and recruit.
So that's, and you said that you're gonna bring all transfers
Right.
regardless of
For all certified transfers.
certified transfers. Yeah,
right,
this is
right.
just certified. Anything that changed benefits, compensation, or
Right.
contract.
And
staff,
a lot of
transfer.
those are lateral movements, and you
Right.
approved some this evening, but
Right.
I'll just bring them all to you, just so you know what's going on. So,
Okay, and BA, we're just deleting, right?
Yes, go ahead, it's in part of our code, CSIP.
Okay, so I don't have any further questions.
I just want to go over one more time about sexual misconduct allegations.
Okay? And which policy are we referring to?
Well, it was in like.
It's in a
Like
bunch of
14 of them.
Right,
Yeah.
well, meaning
Right.
like all of the GBLBs under
Yeah,
F
I
here.
think GBLB is the parent one for all
Right.
those policies.
I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that I read that right. So, I understood it that if anyone, applies here, it's regardless if there's any allegations or not, you have to call DESI and get their last employment.
Yes.
That's any.
Yeah, the way I read it, and y'all might want to pay attention here, because this kind of changes as of tonight. That means before we hire anyone, we have to call DESI and verify that they did not lie on their application
Right.
as to prior employment.
Right.
So if we look at their application, they say, I worked for ABC School District. Before we offer anybody a job, we need to call DESI and say, can you confirm for us that they actually did work for ABC School District?
Right, calling that school is not adequate.
No.
We
Right.
have to
You
call
have to
DESI.
call, you have to call
You have to call
DESI, and they
DESI.
have to verify their employment history.
Well, Dester's gonna love all those phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was a bit of an overreach, but that's
Surely,
okay.
is there a database that you could just go to?
I don't know, do you know? I mean, I don't know how they know
They
where
haven't
they
told
work.
us anything if we
Yeah.
just go
Yeah.
I mean, there might be a database, but the policy is,
The policy states very
You got-
simply, you gotta call DESI to confirm their
Yeah.
employment.
okay, so then, it goes under circumstance number 1, 2, and 3. So I am looking at GBLB.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where I'm at right now on the
Okay.
screen. so.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
okay.
So I just kind of want to go back over this here.
All right.
So,
Let's do circumstance 1. There's that one.
there we go. So it is upon request, the district must share information about a former employee when the employee left the district due to, allegations. So that doesn't mean it's been
That doesn't mean.
Solved.
That's right,
just an allegation, period.
that's right.
Okay. And I think this is the same policy where if somebody calls you, yes, on page.
You have a choice, you gotta tell them.
Right.
If they call you, under that circumstance, if they were under allegations of sexual misconduct, under that statute, and they even go on to define what that statute says, and irrespective of whether they were adjudicated and were found guilty or what, you have to tell that prospective employer what was going on,
Okay,
all right?
sorry. I just want to be really clear on this.
Okay,
Okay.
but I want to make sure we're talking, when we're using the word allegations.
Right.
I know.
That has to be a legal, that
I
can't
know.
just be
Right.
rumor and innuendo. That has to be, somebody has made a
To me,
formal allegation
there
of
are,
something,
I
right?
would say there are charges filed.
Right, but
Okay,
there has to be something legally.
Correct.
so you have to call the authorities and make an allegation.
No, I
No.
think it's saying that if
No.
there were allegations made while that person was under your employment,
Right.
and law enforcement was all involved, and there were charges filed, and they decided just to
Okay.
move on down the road,
Okay,
that's enough, that you gotta tell that prospective employer what's going on.
okay,
You know, that there were charges filed, there were allegations made, law enforcement was involved, blah, 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 blah. So to me, the key on that is if charges are filed.
Okay, that's because it says it has defined in criminal statutes. so
Correct.
No doubt about it, it has to be filed.
Well,
okay.
it could just be in the process of investigation too.
Now,
where
that's a
charges-
different circumstance.
Charges haven't been filed.
That's a different circumstance. Go to circumstance 2. All right, and that is that they are under investigation by the Children's Division. Irrespective of the result of that investigation, if they were under investigation by the Children's Division for sexual misconduct, you have to share that with the employer, with the prospective employer. All right, you have a choice, you have to. If the Children's Division was involved, you have to, there's an investigation. It doesn't say an internal investigation, it says an investigation of the
Right.
Children's Division. Because when we have allegations, we always turn over to law enforcement, but we also do an internal investigation as well. You know, we question teachers, we question kids, and then we try to get to the bottom of it. For the most part, we do turn it over to law enforcement, but we still have a quasi-informal investigation. But circumstance 3 then is interesting, because it says upon request, the district must share information about a former employee, potential public school or charter school employer, when the employee has violated board policy related to sexual misconduct with a student as determined by the board after a contested case due process hearing. So we believe a employee of ours violated student district policy because of sexual misconduct, all right? Because of that, we're gonna bring it to the board, because we're gonna fire him, all right? So we're gonna come to the board, we're gonna have a due process hearing, all right? In many, many cases, what happens in that situation is the person will resign before it ever gets to due process. They're gonna say, I'm not gonna do this, I'm not gonna put up with it, I just quit, and they will resign. So they never had or were afforded a due process hearing. They would have had that opportunity, but they quit before they could, all right? In that case, that's the part that becomes a slippery slope. Because if it goes before the board and you have a due process hearing, and as a result of that, you decide to terminate that employee or not terminate that employee, it doesn't matter. It was a due process hearing before the board. The result of that hearing then is reportable to the prospective employer. You can say, hey, these were charges, they went to the board, they had a due process hearing, here's what happened, all right? The problem is if you never get to that point, all right, and they quit, and they go apply someplace else.
Well, then
All right.
they didn't contest it then.
Well, it doesn't matter. They said that's the slippery slope. That's where they say you got to call an attorney. Because if you say something negatively about an employee's right to a future job that doesn't fall under one of these three,
Right.
you may have a legal issue. And they may come back and sue the district because you violated your own policy and you violated statute. And so that's where they say, if you get to that situation, call an attorney and get their direction in terms of how best to proceed. So it's almost like if they quit before you give them a hearing, they could come back on you, all right?
Right.
So,
So then down there on page 6 now, this is if a district or a reference disclosure,
36, okay.
so this is all you can ask people. Is that what, that's what I understood.
That's what it is right now, right. But wait, let me see. Information required by law, following will be provided to any entity or person upon request. Names, positions, salaries, length of service. So they can call that, you give that to them no matter what. all
Right.
But in addition, information, allegation, sexual misconduct, that's the new part, will be disclosed to public schools or charter schools as detailed below.
Okay.
And that's the circumstance.
So they can go get a job anywhere else without you disclosing. You don't have a legal right or obligation to disclose in
Yeah,
any
here it
case
just says
other
disclosed to public
than,
schools or charter schools, not to.
other than a public or charter
Correct.
school. Right.
Correct.
Right.
Otherwise, you're back to 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, they could go work, heaven forbid, for a daycare center.
Right.
And.
Not a thing you can do about
Can't
it.
say anything about it.
You have,
Private school?
you
We should say
cannot.
charter
It says
school.
public schools or charter schools. I don't think charter schools are private schools.
So,
So I think private schools, you couldn't tell them anything.
And the bad thing is you can't tell them.
I know, you can't legally, you can't.
You legally
The
cannot
person
tell them.
can come back and sue you
Yeah.
for violating their rights. Yeah,
That's kind of a hole.
it is.
Okay, I just kind of wanted to go back over that one, because I read it, and anyway, I just, there's a lot of employee things there,
Yeah.
that if
and-
you mess it up,
I
you
know,
mess it
can
up.
mess it up real bad. But, you know,
Wow.
the seriousness, of the gravity of it, though, is it's important enough that you probably just need to be contacting your school attorney anyway.
Yep.
And give direction on how to proceed.
Yep.
You know, you just don't say, I think I can figure this one out, and go with it. Yeah,
I just gotta read the policy.
I think MSBA will be getting a call really quickly. I think Susie Goldhammer and I will become very good friends, so. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, and I understand why they're doing it. They just put a little piece in there that makes it really creates liability issues for school districts. And so,
Okay,
okay,
okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Anything else on policies? And as we move forward, folks, and I know that this is the last board meeting for this particular board as it sits. So as we move into the next cycle, if the way we're doing the policy reviews is okay, well, that, we'll continue doing them. It's however you want to do them. We can be as thorough or non-thorough as you want to be, but I will tell you, this was a slew. And there was a lot of them. And these were put out in January, so it takes a good 6 weeks just to vet them, just to read them, go through the administrators with them, go through the subcommittee with them, and then send them out to the board as well. And so, you know, I'm just trying to gauge where all the board is in terms of your need for information. Because I know some of you don't need as much and some of you need a lot, all right? So I'm just trying to wrap the policy around that to make it an easier process, if we can.
I
That's
think
just-
you're doing fine.
that's
I
just
like
for
the
what it's
way
worth.
how-
So,
Who's on your policy committee right now?
Right now, it is Brent and Farrell and Shane.
I'll ask the rest of the board their opinion. Shane did ask me if he could stay on that policy committee. Does anybody else have a problem with that or think that's a bad idea because he's not going to be on the board? I mean, he's not actually setting the policy, he's just helping review them. But what's the board's feeling?
He's good at it.
My opinion is, the board hires a superintendent and sets policy for the school. And we don't do anything else. And if we don't do that, we're not doing our job. I don't think that's one we want to farm out.
Okay.
If a board member wants to go to him and ask for his advice, I don't see anything wrong with that, because it's not confidential information. But I don't think he belongs on I don't think he belongs on a subcommittee of the board in that role. That's one of our critical operations.
I understand that. Do you need a third member, or are you guys good to file?
Well, yeah, I
two,
mean,
or-
I think after the election, then I think we'll appoint the subcommittee of the board to review policy at that point in time, so. And it's fine with me if the subcommittee's working well and you want different members on it, it's whatever, it's at the board's discretion, it's whatever the board wants to do.
Okay, we'll talk about that down the road. Any other questions on policies? Okay, let's move on to the investment grade audit.
Okay, this is gonna be, I just need to give some clarification to the board. I put this in the board packet, and then I had an opportunity this weekend to kind of review numbers again. And there are some things that are bothersome to me that I would, at this point, like the board to table action on it until I have an opportunity to get more information. And there's several things. One's on the cost side, part of it's on the cost side, part of it's on the financing side. And one of the concerns, and we had the meeting last week, and I thought they did a fairly good job of explaining the preliminary results of the investment grade audit. I was disappointed that we didn't realize the savings that we had hoped we would have back in the fall. I think a lot of that went back to our usage, which, okay, that's fine. They put the data loggers up there and it is what it is, so I understand that. I did have a bit of a concern, because I don't know if you all noticed it, but when they came out and they did the walkthrough in May, and they came out, they counted all the lights, and they did everything they needed to do and all that, their preliminary finding at that time is they were estimating savings of $44,000 a year on a project cost for doing the LED retrofit of $164,000, all right? And then it went from there to about $200,000 after the IGA. And so I put in a call to Integrity, and they're giving me some information. I wanted the scope of work. They've already turned into Tips Tops. I received the scope of work from them. I want some verification from Tips Tops, TAPS, whatever it is, that particular project meets all the industry specifications and is in compliance with the bid law, and is a competitive bid in that if we go out, we probably wouldn't be able to find anything really any cheaper. I just want some assurance of that, just because of that disparity. And I'm waiting on a call back from Integrity as to give me an explanation of why. I mean, why did you miss some fixtures? I mean, what happened?
And you would think, the other thing is, if we went from an annual savings of $44,000 back to $30,000, and they did miss fixtures is why the other number went up, then our savings number should have went up and not down.
Yeah, if there were more fixtures involved, you would have thought that would have been the case. You know, unless they missed all the fixtures that was in a building that is very seldom occupied. I don't know. But all I know is I need an answer from them about what's the difference. Now, the total cost, and I put it in your board packet, is $233,840, I think. And that includes the IGA that we wrote into. And Parker gave that to me like Thursday. I had that on Thursday. And so now we're looking at financing $233,840. Get to that page.
See, 238,517, what I said. I read the wrong thing.
What's that, 230?
No, you're right.
We're at
238,517.
I'm sorry, like,
You've got
this didn't
it.
come to us.
Yeah, I changed it.
238.
I changed it in all years, we changed mine. The 238,517 included the 2% that Tips Tops puts on top of it. So that's why it went up to that.
Okay.
So it is 238,517. So I contacted LJ Hart, and they are working on some leasing options for that, all right? Again, the concern that I have is I really was hoping that we could have this payback done within 5 years, 4 or 5 years. But the numbers right now at that rate, and if we're only gonna save $30,000 a year, now they did say that's the low end. You know, you should be saving a lot more than that. But if it is just $30,000, it's gonna be a payback of what, 7 years, 8 years to get that? And for a lighting retrofit, an LED retrofit? And so that's bothersome to me, because I thought we was gonna get like a 3 or 4 year payback on that deal, all right? So then the other thing is that, so I want to look at other financing options. Got LJ Hart, I still think I want to share it with our locals and see if they have any interest in financing it. I want to give both West Plains and Simmons a shot at it. And then also, I have a call out to DNR, which is the Department of Natural Resources, because they have grants available that for energy performance grants such as this, where they will loan you money at very cheap interest rates to be able to do jobs exactly like this. That might be our best opportunity to do that. So I want to find out what our best financing option is. I'm not saying we shouldn't do the lighting retrofit, because at the end of the day, irrespective of how long it's going to take us to pay it back, it is going to be good for the district, all right? But I will give you some preliminary numbers I received, is that we're sending out $30,000, but they gave me a 5 and 7 year option from LJ Hart. I think even on the 5-year option, it's still going to be like a $54,000 payment.
So we're down.
So we're saving
underwater.
30 and we're losing, and we're paying 54,000.
We're underwater 24,000.
So yeah, I mean, the only way you're going to make it pay for itself is spread it out over 10 years. You know, well, why do we want to do that on a lighting retrofit? That makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So the numbers, I guess as I thought about it, the numbers just weren't matching up. They just, not to the point that I want the board to commit to it until I find out some answers. Because either the scope is off and the project is way too high, all right? In which case, if we do that, then I think we need to put it out to bid and just find out for ourselves. But if absent that, then there's no way we can get it to pay for itself, you know? And I think a lot of it may go back to the usage. I mean, if our usage is that low, then it may be difficult. I mean, then I guess, does it beg the question, is it worth even doing?
Well, I mean, here's the problem with that, Bill, is that the math on it is not that hard.
Right. I mean,
At the light bulb level, I mean, you can do that math.
Yeah.
There's no way it doesn't pay for itself.
Yeah. Eventually it does.
There's no way. Well, I mean.
Yeah, it will.
I mean, you know, that little bit I did at the shop.
Right.
We spent $400 and got it back in 6 months.
Well, and
It's a job that has to be done, we just have to figure out
Yeah,
if we're getting
exactly.
the right people to do it.
If the project was $165,000 and we were saving $45,000 a year, like the original thing, then I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
You know, we're there in 3 years.
Right.
3.5 years.
Right.
But when it came in that our savings is about $30,000 and the cost is now $238, well, that makes sense. You know, I mean, at that point, yeah, we could go ahead and do it, but either we're gonna subsidize it every year until we get it paid off, or we're just gonna extend out the years.
Now, part of that is the IGA itself.
That is correct, about $28,000.
Part of it is that.
So the reality, the cost of the project they're saying is about $213,000.
Right.
Right, which is a far cry from $167,000 when they did the walkthrough. So I just want to see what we're committing to before we just jump in.
So you're saying that's what you don't know, that 167 to 213?
Yeah, I want an answer from Integrity about what happened.
Yeah, where did the
You know,
45,000 come from?
I mean, go ahead.
And just to separate the two issues, I mean, maybe we committed to the IGA, maybe we just paid for that.
We did.
Right? Why finance that over?
Sure.
I'm not sure
Well,
what
we could.
the advantage of financing
No,
that.
and we don't have to do that, we just pay that and move on down the road, and then
Right.
just finance $205,000, which will help
Right.
our monthly payments. But I'm saying even at 205 or 213, whatever it is, I would almost bet on a 7-year payback, it's gonna be, I bet you it's gonna be in the neighborhood of $35,000, $40,000 a year. So it's still not gonna pay for itself.
Right.
You know? So I don't know, I just need to do some research. There might be a better option through DNR, because I've heard that you can get grants through the Department of Natural Resources exactly for this purpose at about 2.75%. But the Fed's cutting rates big time right now. So when I called LJ Hart, last week, they said, you're calling it a good time. You know, you do have coronavirus going on, but on the other hand, it's a good time to borrow money, you know, so.
Take a currency.
Yeah, I mean, and basically, so, yeah, I mean, if we're gonna jump in, we're jumping in at a good time. I'm just saying it doesn't reach. Our savings, based on what they're telling us, doesn't reach what it's gonna cost to do the job. And it will eventually, if the board doesn't mind paying out about 10 years. And that's, to me, it's an awful long time to pay for a lighting retrofit.
So are you suggesting we table that issue?
Yeah, I do. I'm gonna table it right now. I mean, at the end of the day, folks, it might be better off just to take a relook at our roof plan and decide, do we just wanna pay for the lighting retrofit and be done with it? Because then guess what? We get that done and you're saving $30,000 or $40,000 a year, right now. So maybe it's not worth leasing this thing, you know? I'm not saying that doing the lighting retrofit's not a good idea, because you're right, the savings are there. But we still have to make it pay for itself. And so, I mean, I think two things. I think the cost of saving, energy savings went way down, and the cost of the project went way up, and that's not the way things should go. So I need to figure out why. And so if you give me a month to try to figure it out, I can come back maybe with a more solid recommendation for you. Either on the cost or on the leasing side, or find a better way to pay for it, so, or maybe not. But I just need a little more time to do that, so.
And this, yes, and then I actually had a, teacher asked me this question, and I know we talked about it back in May, because we all got on this, light bulb kick and all of the, Kelvins or, whatever. So I had a, ex-teacher tell me that if it's that real bright light, that it shines off the desk, and it's really hard to, so what did the main guy,
5,000.
Ryan, yeah, do you remember what that
5,000
was?
kelvin.
He talked
Yeah,
about it.
you've got
So that's your daylight.
4,000, which is yellow, you got 5,000.
At
and
some
then-
point in time, it
and then-
turns blue or whatever.
And then you've got 6,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can get 6,500.
okay,
You get a tan.
because,
It starts glowing.
right, so I'm just, that's a really, crazy kind of question, but they were like, those bright lights, it's hard to see the papers on the desk. Like, it was a complaint of the students whenever, I don't know, whatever Kelvin that they put in or whatever room. I'm just,
If you remember Ryan's presentation, he actually said that there are some rooms
Right,
that
okay.
they put 6s in, but most rooms are 5s.
on
But
our campus or just out there in the world? I'm sorry, what did Ryan say?
Ryan said that in some rooms,
Like
it's
our campus?
beneficial.
Oh, no, okay.
In any campus.
Any campus, okay.
So depending on the activity that's taking place in that particular room,
Okay.
they may recommend a higher Kelvin bulb.
If you have a
Art.
room that has a lot of activity,
Artwork.
would require, or
computer
creativity,
screens.
but if it's basically just, computer screens would be another one.
Right.
But if you're just in the normal classroom environment, then I think typically the sweet spot was 5,000.
Okay. And I know Ryan knows what he's doing, I'm just, sure would hate to
No,
spend
and I asked-
$100,000 on a bunch of big, bright light bulbs
Well,
that
and
kids can't see the
I-
papers.
And as far as that, I mean, I will need to make sure that we have the right degree of light in there.
Sunglasses.
But I did, I had a candid conversation with Ryan, I had a candid conversation with Bill Wheeler, and I'm waiting on a call back from Parker. I just need to know what happened. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me how you can go from such extremes in 6 months. And so I just need to find out. What?
It's just a sales pitch.
I hope not. I don't think so. I still say the IGA is gonna be really good. It will give us
Yes.
tons of information about our school district that will help the board make decisions in the
Well,
future.
and that was my only complaint the other night, and I'm sure I looked like a real, just like a, fuddy-duddy, but I understand that they did not have the entire audit. But I was more looking at the entire audit of what shape is our campus in?
Yeah.
Not on what's gonna make integrity money and is going
Well,
to do their
I will tell
project
you-
management risk.
In fairness to what you asked the other night, what they're gonna do now, because I asked the questions, they're gonna go back to the whole IGA and figure it out. Because they got the information, they're
Right.
gonna have to go back to that and determine what was different then versus what we found in the IGA. All right?
Right.
And so they were prepared to answer that question the other night because it's just the preliminary results. But I'm not sure that Parker he wasn't involved at the beginning.
Right,
And so I don't think he knew the disparity between the two numbers.
right,
Bill and Ryan knew.
right,
Because they knew.
Right.
All right, so and they don't know because they didn't do the IGA.
right.
So we'll get some answers on that. I want some answers on the cost side, and I want to figure out a good way to pay for it. That makes sense, and I'm not sure paying it out over 10 years makes sense. So I'm just moving on, so.
Okay.
All right, okay. So when we get to that, I would ask that the board would just table that till next month.
We can do that. Proposed early degree program, is that something you or?
Yeah, just let me give a little setup, and then I'm gonna have Marty speak to it. But about a year or two ago, a couple of years ago, I think we visited with Dennis Lancaster. He was academic dean for Missouri State West Plains. Had the opportunity, I just happened to be at graduation at West Plains, and there were a number of kids that received their diploma from West Plains High, and then they announced that, in a few days, they're gonna go walk across the stage and get their associate's degree from Missouri State West Plains. I thought, well, that's impressive. Why can't we do the same thing? So I visited with Marty about it. We had Dr. Lancaster come in, talked at length about it. So it's been kind of in the work for a couple of years. And I'm not gonna steal all Marty's thunder. I would like the board to consider an early degree program. It's not gonna have an impact on a large number of our kids, but it may fit the mold for some of our kids. And so with that, Marty, you want to kind of talk about what the early degree program is all about and how you're trying to mold that into what you're doing?
Yeah, just really briefly, we would put that out to sophomores that met certain criteria as far as GPA and credit acquisition. They would have the opportunity to sign up for this early degree program for their junior and senior year, and they would have to commit to it, late sophomore year to finish out their junior and senior year. We're talking probably 2 or 3 kids tops out of each class. There may be years that we don't have any And there may be years that we have 2 or 3, again, would be our high water mark. Because, first of all, you have to have the credentials to do it. You know, your GPA's gotta be good, and you've just gotta be a student that this would be beneficial for. And frankly, all of our students don't need to have a associate's degree and a high school diploma when they graduate. For somebody that's maybe going into the medical field, this would be super helpful to them because they've already got their general studies out of the way when they graduate. They would take their classes at MSU West Plains, so they would be our students, but they would be receiving their high school credit at Missouri State West Plains. That would be Monday through Thursday, then they would report to us on Friday and could do things like senior project work, speech, A+ tutoring, those kind of hours then on Friday. Probably the biggest drawback with this for a lot of our students is it would take their extracurriculars, or you almost have to give up your social, the social high school experience goes away for your junior, senior year if this is what you want to do, because you're a college student. You're sitting in college classes with other college students, and you're advancing both degrees. So it's a great opportunity for a select few students that you know, they're smart enough to do it. They have the career path that's what they need, and then the social aspect of high school is really not that important to them. So if they kind of fit all those criteria, and their parents have to pay, I mean, you got to be willing to start paying for your kid's college as a junior in high school instead of freshman college years. So we want to provide our kids with as many opportunities as possible. This may be something that we don't have any students for some years, but if we do have one that it would benefit, we want to be able to offer that to them.
Would they be able to get student loans to pay for that, or do you know?
They would not, I believe, for the FAFSA end of things. And then A+ is tricky, like they wouldn't get it their junior and senior year in high school,
Right.
but they could then be eligible as a freshman in college if they went to, so you're probably gonna have a lot of that, so.
Okay.
There's a way they can do it. It was explained to me but it wouldn't happen very often.
Okay.
So yeah, you're not gonna get a lot of financial assistance.
Are these requirements something that they came up with, we come up with?
This is what they call it. I mean,
This is their-
West Plains has been doing this for several years, and Willow is the first school that MSU West Plains has said, you know, we would consider doing it with you guys as well. So we adopted a lot of what West Plains already had in place, and they usually have, 4, 5, 6 students do this every year.
And they transport, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
They transport themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does West Plains require similar requirements for the Friday of the senior year?
It varies
They have
from student to
some-
student,
yeah.
what they need. The senior project would work well for us
For
because
us,
that
yeah.
gives them something, obviously, that they can work on during Fridays. I know they use an example of, these are not students that usually have a ton of
Right.
extra work because they've done it when they need to, but they've helped out around campus, mentoring programs and that kind of stuff.
I was just wondering if we were requiring significantly more than what West Plains would for, since we're gonna require that
Yeah,
on
just
Friday.
the senior project element and speech class,
Yeah.
which they don't require. So not something that would be used a whole lot, but
Right.
would be a really great opportunity for a kid that needed it.
There's really no cost to us, is there?
No.
And they're still considered a student here the entire time?
Yes.
What about attendance? How do you figure attendance?
We count the 80, we
Just-
get the attendance. Yeah.
Just find out if they go, huh?
Right,
Okay.
right.
If we're giving them credit, does that miss you, if they wanted to play?
If they wanted to play, yeah,
Because
they
it's-
could still technically play. However, the problem becomes, and I know West Plains said they did have a few athletes that made it work. It just becomes really difficult to try to make that work with, your college classes may go to 5 o'clock.
Right.
And you've got practice, and you got games, and you got tournaments, so it's a little more complicated, but there could be a scenario where it worked.
Any other questions for Marty about that? You got any more input on it, Bill? Very good. Got the spring regional meeting coming up at Houston on Thursday, the 2nd of April.
Yes, and I was just going to see if there's anyone interested in attending that. I don't know if you've attended the Spring Regional in the past. If you are, let me know, and I can get you registered for that, and we can drive over there. Typically, they start, I think, in the afternoon, they're over sometime that evening, they're usually able involved or something like that. So, but if you are interested in attending that, just let me know.
Any comments from the guests tonight?
I got a couple questions, this on what Marty was talking about, for the board. When the kids are, if they go to that program, and they're going to that, you say they drive themselves, but in event of a car wreck or something of that nature, or something that happens while they're on campus, who is liable?
There's legal forms that we're not liable for that. The parents would have to sign off that they're giving permission to, and taking responsibility for their student.
And would they be qualified for scholarships as well?
Yes, yeah.
Well, Matt?
I just got one question on the lighting, not to bring that back up, but does the grant force you to take it all in one swing? Is it something that you could, take, I don't know, I'm looking at a narrow scope here, but is it something that you can do on a trial basis, scale it back, spend 40 grand or something to that effect, and then look and see if their numbers test out in there, and then once it proves itself, go from there?
I guess you could, but they guarantee the savings.
Oh, they do?
They do
Yeah.
guarantee the savings. If not, then they make up the difference.
Yeah.
So it'd be better to take it.
And they're only guaranteeing just over 30,000 in savings a year annually right now, which just isn't very much. And that's assuming that we did everything across the district. So if we only did like a portion of it, then the savings would be 30,000, the savings would be like 4,000 or 5,000.
And they may not guarantee anything, you
wouldn't,
just
no.
pick and choose.
No, and since we're not doing a performance contracting deal, they're not gonna guarantee anything.
Right.
We're just doing a straight contract with them, we're just saying do
There's no
work for us.
performance contract.
Yeah,
They
so-
did an awful one, so there's
Oh,
no
they don't?
benefits.
Well,
I thought-
I thought that they still did.
Well, not on this
Not
one,
on
because they
stereo
said
one.
they couldn't, because they said they couldn't guarantee the savings.
Right.
No profit
Because it's so
or
small.
Yeah.
And that was all,
Not
that was
enough money
all of
in.
our lights,
That's every fixture
football
in
field
it.
lights.
I don't know if that's in the scope or not, I don't think they looked at those lights. I don't know.
Jesse County said 2,700.
They never did talk
So,
about it.
27
There's our
fixtures.
15 extra $1,000 we're gonna save, right?
Probably. I know.
You mean that,
Tell me
like,
something I don't know.
like those lights up there aren't, they aren't LED
I doubt
up the football field?
it. I doubt it.
I mean, they just put those in a couple years ago, didn't they?
Oh, no.
Like the big,
It's been longer than that.
Those are me.
I was
Metal high
still
track.
working here when we got those, yeah.
I
don't know
can't
looking at it.
tell, I'll ask.
Kelvin's ran it.
I'm guessing they're not on.
is that
there.
when they modeled and did,
Uh,
bleachers and stadium, and they
I
did
think
new
we had
lights?
those before,
I think
we had those
they
before the
did.
stadium.
Yeah.
Those,
Okay.
see,
We
those
had
are,
those quite a while, because we had 4 wooden poles on each side of the football field before those were put in.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's been quite a while.
It's like
but those lights are not a matter of,
technology.
yeah, that's not a matter of rewiring it and putting a new bulb in it. That's a new fixture.
So when you say
not a retrofit.
fixture,
No, it's not a retrofit.
you mean like, take down the big metal pole and put up a new metal pole?
There you go.
Like that's a fixture?
The thing at the top is the fixture, you can keep the pole.
Okay, okay. Like, what does the word fixture mean? Okay. Okay.
All right, very good. Let's move on to items for action.
Because that's where I want to save energy, is up at the football field.
A motion would be in order to approve the FFA Advisory Council as it was presented.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
And opposed? Very good. We're going to ask for a motion to approve the policy revisions that were handed out in supplement A. I'd receive a motion to do so.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
By Collie. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
And opposed? Very good. I'm going to, I don't have to have a motion to table, I'm just going
Do
to
we need a
table.
motion to table since it's on the agenda?
We can.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
It didn't matter.
Dean makes a motion to table. A second.
Second.
And Matt. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Motion will be in order to approve an early degree program as presented.
I'll make that motion.
In a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
And opposed? Very good. Anything else for open session tonight? Receive a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make it.
In a second.
Second.
Do that by roll call.
Aye.
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 And aye. Very good. Thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Let's see if we turn the video off.
Need to ask you a question.
Good we get
Thank you.